It was a chilly dawn in the town of Windmere when Elias, a seasoned baker known for his warm loaves and even warmer heart, stepped outside his shop to set up his signboard. The street was quiet except for the distant clatter of a milkman's cart. The air smelled of rising dough and the promise of a new day. But as Elias bent to place the sign near his door, he noticed something unexpected. A small figure curled up on the cobblestones, wrapped in a tattered blanket. Elias knelt closer. It was a boy no older than 10, his face pale and his lips trembling as he slept. His dark hair was matted, and his clothes were patched and threadbare. For a moment, Elias hesitated, unsure whether to wake him. But the boy stirred, opening wide, frightened eyes that darted around before settling on Elias. "Hey, lad," Elias said gently. "What are you doing out here? Are you all right?" The boy blinked rapidly, as if unsure whether to speak. Finally, his voice, barely more than a whisper, came out. "I was waiting for you." "For me?" Elias asked, taken aback. "Do I know you?" The boy shook his head. "No, but my mama said the baker on this street is kind. She said you'd help." Elias felt a tightness in his chest. "Where is your mama?" The boy's gaze dropped and he hugged the blanket tighter around himself. "She's gone. She said to come here before she left. She said you wouldn't turn me away." The sincerity in the boy's voice and the raw emotion in his eyes melted the last of Elias's hesitation. His heart ached at the thought of a child wandering the streets alone, braving the cold on the promise of kindness. He stood, holding out his hand. "Come inside, lad. You're shivering. There's no need to stay out here. Let's get you warm and you can tell me everything." The boy hesitated for only a moment before taking Elias's hand. The baker led him inside, shutting the door firmly behind them. The shop was cozy and smelled of fresh bread and cinnamon, with trays of pastries cooling on the counter. Elias guided the boy to a small stool near the hearth, where a fire crackled softly. "What's your name, lad?" Elias asked, handing the boy a cup of warm milk. "Finn," the boy replied, sipping cautiously. His hand shook, but he didn't spill a drop. "Finn Miller." "Well, Finn," Elias said, "you're safe here now. Eat something. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in days." Finn glanced at the trays of bread and pastries, his hunger apparent, but he hesitated. "I don't have any money." Elias chuckled softly. "You think I'd let you go hungry just because of that? Go on, take whatever you like." Finn finally reached for a roll, nibbling it tentatively before devouring it in earnest. Elias watched him eat, a swirl of questions in his mind. Who was this boy? What had happened to his mother? But he knew better than to press too soon. As Finn ate, Elias busied himself kneading dough for the next batch of bread, his hands moving automatically through the motions. He decided to wait until the boy had eaten his fill before prying further, but as he worked, Finn began to speak, his words tumbling out in fits and starts. My mama, she was sick. She tried to keep working, but it got worse. We didn't have enough for medicine. She told me stories about when she was little, how her papa used to bring her here to buy your bread. She said you were the kindest man she'd ever met." Elias paused, his hand stilling in the dough. The words struck a chord, stirring faint memories of a cheerful young woman who used to visit the shop with her father. Could this boy be her son? "What was your mother's name, Finn?" he asked gently. "Lila," Finn said, his voice trembling. Elias's heart sank. He remembered Lila well, a bright, lively girl with a ready smile. It had been years since he'd last seen her, but the memory was vivid. He swallowed hard, glancing at Finn's thin frame and worn face. It was clear that life had been unkind to both mother and son. She was right about one thing. Elias said finally. I'll do whatever I can to help you, Finn. Over the following days, Elias made good on that promise. Finn stayed in the small room above the bakery, which Elias used as a storeroom and occasional guest room. It wasn't much, but Finn didn't complain. In fact, he quickly proved himself eager to help, sweeping the floors, cleaning trays, and even learning to knead dough under Elias's patient guidance. As Finn settled into this new routine, he began to open up more about his life. He spoke of how his mother had worked as a seamstress until her illness made it impossible, how they had sold their belongings one by one to pay for food and rent, and how, in the end, they had been forced out of their tiny home. Leela had held on as long as she could, but when it became clear she wouldn't recover, she'd sent Finn to Elias. She said you'd give me a chance, Finn said one evening as they sat by the fire. She said you were the kind of person who didn't turn away when someone needed help. Elias felt a lump rise in his throat. He thought of Leela's faith in him, the trust she'd placed in a man she hadn't seen in years. He resolved to live up to it, not just for Finn's sake, but for hers as well. As the days turned into weeks, Finn became a fixture in the bakery. Customers grew fond of the polite, earnest boy who now helped Elias with everything from arranging displays to delivering orders. His presence brought a new energy to the shop, and Elias found himself smiling more often, buoyed by Finn's determination and resilience. One day, as they prepared a batch of cinnamon rolls, Finn turned to Elias with a shy smile. Do you think I could be a baker someday? Like you? Elias laughed, clapping the boy on the shoulder. I think you're already on your way, lad, but if you really want to be a baker, you'll have to learn all my secrets. Finn's eyes lit up. You'll teach me? Of course, Elias said. We'll start with the basics and go from there. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be the best baker in Windmere. Finn beamed, and for the first time since Elias had found him on the street, the boy looked truly happy. It was a moment that Elias would treasure for years to come. Life in the bakery continued, with Finn growing more confident and capable each day. Elias found himself reflecting on how much his life had changed since that fateful morning. Finn had brought something to the bakery that money couldn't buy, a sense of purpose and a reminder of the importance of compassion. As the seasons passed, the bond between Elias and Finn deepened. They were no longer just baker and helper. They had become family, and while Elias still missed Leela, he took comfort in knowing that her son was safe and thriving. In time, Finn's dream of becoming a baker came true. With Elias's guidance, he mastered the craft, earning the admiration of the townsfolk. The boy who had once slept in front of the shop had found not only a home, but a future. Elias often thought back to that chilly morning, remembering the fear and hope in Finn's eyes as he'd spoken of his mother's faith in a stranger. He had been right to bring the boy inside, to offer him warmth and kindness. In doing so, he had gained far more than he had given, and for that, he would always be grateful. Years turned into decades, and Finn's presence in the bakery transformed it into more than just a place for bread and pastries. It became a symbol of community, kindness, and second chances. Under Elias's tutelage, Finn not only perfected the craft of baking, but also inherited the values that had made Elias so beloved in Windmere. Elias, now graying but still spry, took joy in watching Finn take the lead. The young man, no longer the frightened thin boy he had found, was a picture of confidence and skill, greeting customers with a wide smile and whipping up new recipes that brought people flocking to the shop. Finn had even introduced a signature pastry, a sweet custard-filled bun he named Lila's Delight, in honor of his mother. It became the most popular item on the menu, and customers often asked about its story. Finn would always answer the same way, his voice soft but full of pride. It's named after my mother, who believed in kindness and never gave up. Even when things were hard, she's the reason I'm here today. Elias watched Finn share this piece of his heart with their customers, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Finn's ability to connect with people, to make them feel seen and valued, reminded Elias of why he had chosen to become a baker in the first place. It was never just about the bread. It was about nourishing souls as much as bodies. One day, during the annual Harvest Festival, the town gathered in the square for music, dancing, and feasting. The bakery was at the center of the festivities, with a large stall laden with treats. Finn had spent weeks preparing for the event, waking early and staying late to bake enough to feed the entire town. Elias, though officially retired, had lent a hand, unable to resist the energy of the festival. As Finn handed out Lila's delights to eager children, the mayor approached with a broad smile. "Finn, Elias, you've outdone yourselves this year. The whole town is talking about how the bakery brings us all together." Elias chuckled, shaking his head. "That's Finn's doing. He's the heart of the place now." Finn looked embarrassed but pleased. "I had a good teacher." The mayor raised a hand to silence the modesty. "It's more than baking, Finn. You've built something special here. A place where people feel at home. That's no small thing." The words resonated deeply with Finn, and later that evening, as the festival wound down and the two of them walked back to the shop, he turned to Elias with a thoughtful expression. "Do you ever wonder, Elias?" Finn said. "What would have happened if you hadn't found me that day?" Elias stopped, resting a hand on Finn's shoulder. "I think about it often, lad, but I don't just think about what would have happened to you. I think about what would have happened to me. You brought just as much to my life as I gave to yours." Finn smiled, his eyes glistening. "You've always said that, but I still think I got the better deal." Elias laughed, ruffling Finn's hair. "You're too humble for your own good. Now come on, let's get home before the buns in the oven burn." Over the years, Finn continued to carry the torch Elias had passed to him, not just running the bakery, but expanding its role in the community. He organized bread drives for families in need, hosted baking classes for children, and even started a scholarship fund in Leela's name to help aspiring bakers pursue their dreams. The shop, once a small-town bakery, became a beacon of hope and generosity. When Elias passed away peacefully in his sleep, the entire town mourned the loss of the man who had been a father to so many, but none more so than Finn. In his grief, Finn resolved to honor Elias's legacy by continuing the work they had started together. He hung a small plaque by the bakery's entrance, engraved with a simple phrase, "Kindness feeds the soul." Years later, a new generation discovered the bakery, now called Leela and Elias Bake Shop, run by Finn and his wife Marina. Their twin daughters, Hazel and Clara, could often be found kneading dough or decorating cakes under their father's watchful eye. The legacy of kindness and community had been passed down once more, and the bakery thrived as a testament to the power of compassion. One cold morning, as Finn swept the front steps, he noticed a young girl sitting on the cobblestones nearby, clutching a small bundle. Her face was streaked with tears, and she looked up at him with wide, frightened eyes. "Hello," Finn said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you all right?" The girl hesitated, then said, "My mama told me to wait here. She said the baker on this street would help me." Finn felt a surge of emotion, the memory of his own words to Elias so many years ago rushing back to him. He smiled gently and held out his hand. "She was right," he said. "Come inside, let's get you warm." As the girl took his hand and followed him into the shop, Finn felt a sense of completeness, as if the kindness that had saved him as a boy was now rippling outward in ways he couldn't have imagined. And, as the smell of fresh bread filled the air, Finn knew that the legacy he and Elias had built would endure, one act of kindness at a time. The girl, whose name was Anya, was quiet at first, her large brown eyes scanning the bakery nervously. Finn offered her a seat near the counter, much like Elias had done for him long ago, and handed her a warm mug of cocoa and a slice of soft, buttery bread. She held the mug in her tiny hands, sipping cautiously, her face softening with each bite of bread. Do you want to tell me about your mama, Anya? Finn asked gently. Anya's eyes welled up, but she nodded. She's sick. We don't have a home anymore. She said she needed to go away to find help, but she told me to come here first. The word struck Finn like a bolt of lightning. The parallels to his own story were uncanny, and his heart ached for the little girl sitting before him. He knelt down so they were eye level. You're safe now, Anya. Just like your mama said, we'll figure everything out together. As he spoke, Finn could feel the warmth of Elias's presence as if the old man were still standing beside him. The memory of that fateful morning so many years ago, when Elias had extended his hand to a scared, hungry boy, gave Finn the strength to do the same for Anya. Over the next few days, Finn and Marina worked together to make Anya feel at home. She was given a cozy corner in the upstairs room where Hazel and Clara eagerly shared their toys and helped her settle in. The three children quickly became inseparable, filling the bakery with the sound of laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. Anya, who had been wary and shy, began to blossom under their care. She helped with small tasks in the bakery, dusting flour on counters or arranging pastries in neat rows. Though she was too young to take on much responsibility, her enthusiasm was infectious, and customers couldn't resist her sweet smile. But as days turned into weeks, Finn couldn't stop thinking about Anya's mother. He remembered the fear he'd felt as a child, worrying about his own mother, and the helplessness that had consumed him. He decided he had to do something. He couldn't bear the thought of Anya losing her mother if there was still hope. Finn began asking around town discreetly, sharing Anya's story with those who might have seen her mother or heard of someone needing help. Windmere was a small town, and word traveled quickly. Within days, a lead came from one of the town's healers who mentioned a woman matching Anya's mother's description had been seeking medicine in the neighboring village of Redford. Marina urged Finn to go, insisting that she and the girls could manage the bakery in his absence. You found her, Marina said, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. Now it's time to find her mother. The journey to Redford was not far, but it felt long as Finn wrestled with memories of his own mother's struggles. He couldn't shake the hope that he might be able to reunite Anya with her mother, just as Elias had given him a second chance at family. When he reached the village, he went straight to the apothecary, where the healer's description led him. The apothecary confirmed Finn's suspicions. A woman with dark hair and tired eyes came through a few weeks ago, the apothecary said. She was desperate for medicine but couldn't afford much. She mentioned heading west, toward the hills, where she thought she might find work. The West Hills were rugged and sparsely populated, but Finn knew he couldn't give up. Armed with only the faint hope that the apothecary's account was accurate, he set out. It was late afternoon when Finn found her. She was sitting on a fallen log near a small makeshift camp, her face pale and her posture hunched with weariness. She looked up sharply as Finn approached, her expression wary, but when he said Anya's name, her eyes widened with hope and recognition. She's safe, Finn said quickly, holding up his hands in a gesture of reassurance. She's at my bakery in Windmere. Your daughter is safe. Tears streamed down the woman's face as she struggled to stand. Finn stepped forward to support her, realizing how frail she was. You don't know how much this means to me, she said, her voice hoarse with emotion. I thought I'd lost her forever. The journey back to Windmere was slow but filled with purpose. Finn helped Anya's mother, whose name was Mara, walk as much as she could, resting frequently. Along the way, he learned more about her struggles, her illness, the loss of their home, and her desperate attempts to find a way to provide for her daughter. When they arrived at the bakery, the reunion between mother and daughter was as heartwarming as it was tearful. Anya threw her arms around her mother, her laughter ringing through the shop, and Finn felt a profound sense of peace. Watching them together, he knew that he had done the right thing. Mara's recovery was slow, but with rest, care, and the support of the Windmere community, she began to regain her strength. Finn and Marina offered her a job in the bakery, a role she eagerly embraced once she was well enough. She worked side by side with Finn, her gratitude evident in every smile and gesture. Anya, meanwhile, flourished in her new life. She grew close to Hazel and Clara, and the three of them often declared themselves future bakers, practicing their skills under Finn's watchful eye. The bakery became not just a place of work, but a home. A place where kindness and love wove through every loaf of bread and every pastry. Years later, Finn stood at the counter of the bakery, watching the next generation of bakers, Hazel, Clara, and Anya, serve customers with the same warmth and generosity that had defined the shop for decades. Mara, now a beloved member of the community, supervised a fresh batch of Lila's delights, her hands deftly shaping the dough. As Finn gazed out at the bustling bakery, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The kindness that Elias had shown him had sparked a chain of events that had touched countless lives, and though Elias was no longer there in person, his spirit lived on in every act of compassion, every loaf of bread, and every child who found hope and love within the walls of the shop. Finn smiled, knowing that the story of kindness, started so many years ago, would continue for generations to come. The years rolled on, bringing change to Windmere, but the bakery remained a constant, a cornerstone of the town's heart and soul. Finn, now gray-haired and weathered, stood at the doorway of Leela and Elias' bake shop, watching the sun rise over the cobblestone streets. The early morning light painted the town in warm hues, and the faint sounds of bustling activity began to stir. Life had a rhythm here, and the bakery was its steady heartbeat. Inside, the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon hung in the air. Hazel, Clara, and Anya, now adults, had taken over much of the day-to-day operations of the shop. Each brought their unique flair to the bakery. Hazel's artistic touch turned cakes into masterpieces. Clara's precision ensured every recipe was flawless, and Anya's warmth drew customers from miles around. Together, they carried forward the legacy that Anya and Finn had nurtured so carefully. Mara, though older, still worked in the bakery, delighting customers with stories as she expertly crafted Lila's delights. Her laugh was a familiar, comforting sound, one that reminded Finn of how far they had all come since the day Anya had arrived at his doorstep. Finn often said the bakery was the heart of the town, but it was the people inside it who made it truly special. One quiet afternoon, as Finn sat at the table in the corner, sipping tea and reading a worn ledger, Hazel approached him. "Dad," she said, sitting beside him, "I've been thinking. You've worked so hard for so long. Don't you think it's time to slow down? Let us take care of things from here." Finn chuckled, setting down his cup. "You know, Hazel, your grandfather Elias once told me the same thing, and I told him what I'll tell you. I might slow down, but I'll never stop. This place is a part of me." Hazel smiled knowingly. "Then we'll just have to make sure you don't work too hard." Finn nodded, his eyes twinkling. "Deal." The doorbell jingled as a young boy and his mother entered, their faces lighting up at the sight of the colorful displays. Anya greeted them warmly, offering samples and chatting as if they were old friends. Finn watched with quiet pride, seeing himself in Anya's effortless kindness and the way she made the boy feel at ease. It reminded him of the first time Elias had welcomed him into the bakery. As the day wore on and the sun dipped low, the shop began to quiet. Customers trickled out, their arms laden with bread and pastries, and the bakery settled into a peaceful hum. Finn stepped outside, breathing in the cool evening air. He looked up at the sign above the door, its letters worn but still bold. Lila and Elias Bake Shop. Marina joined him, slipping her arm through his. "It's been a good day," she said softly. Finn nodded, his gaze drifting to the windows where Hazel, Clara, and Anya were laughing as they cleaned up. Every day here is a good day. Because of them. Because of all of this. Marina squeezed his arm. You built something beautiful, Finn. You and Elias. No, Finn said, shaking his head with a smile. We all built it. Together. It's the people who make it beautiful. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the golden glow of the bakery's lights spill onto the street, a beacon of warmth in the cooling night. Finn thought of everything that had led to this moment. The cold morning he'd found Anya, the journey to reunite her with Mara, the trust Ayas had placed in him as a boy, and the countless small acts of kindness that had rippled outward over the years. As the first stars appeared in the sky, Finn turned to Marina, his heart full. Do you know what Elias used to say? He asked. Marina tilted her head, waiting. Kindness feeds the soul, Finn said. I think that's why this place has lasted so long. It's not just bread we're making, it's something more. Marina nodded, her eyes reflecting the same warmth that Finn felt. Together they stepped back inside, where the hum of family and community filled the space like music. And so, as the years stretched on, the legacy of kindness continued to grow, weaving its way through the lives of everyone who passed through the bakery's doors. It was a story that never truly ended, a tale of love, resilience, and the simple, powerful act of helping those in need. And in every loaf of bread, every shared smile, and every heartfelt gesture, the spirit of Elias, Lila, and Finn lived on, proving that kindness was the greatest gift of all.